All right, today we're going to dive into the design criteria for the gear that protects soldiers from some of the most lethal hazards you can even imagine. Let's get right into the specifics of individual protective equipment, or IPE, for what's known as a chemical, biological, radiological, and nuclear, or CBRN, battlefield.
So, I want you to just imagine this for a second. Imagine trying to do something complex, like fixing a radio or clearing a jam in your weapon, but you're doing it while breathing through a straw, wearing thick oven mitts, and your vision is totally restricted by a fogged-up window. Yeah, that's pretty much the reality for a soldier in full protective gear. But on a CBRN battlefield, this super uncomfortable suit is literally your only life support. It's an incredible piece of engineering, designed to keep out microscopic killers, while somehow still letting you be a combat-effective soldier. So where do we even begin? Well, let's start with the most critical area of protection, the stuff that keeps hazards out of your airway and away from your face. This is, without a doubt, your primary shield against that invisible threat. Okay, so first up is the respirator, which you probably know as a gas mask. It's got a couple of jobs. It protects your respiratory tract, your eyes, and your face from chemical agents, biological agents, and radioactive dust just by filtering the air you breathe. But, and this is a big but, it has one critical limitation. It offers absolutely zero protection against carbon monoxide. So what does that mean? It means you never, ever use it for firefighting, period. But what if the threat is, kind of there, but not fully active yet? That's where the facelet mask comes into play. It's a much lighter alternative, and it gives you some marginal protection for your nose and mouth against low concentrations of agents. And here's the real kicker. Its key advantage is that it causes way less physiological stress. You can even wear it while you're resting or trying to sleep.
And this right here shows you the core trade-off perfectly. On one hand, you've got the high stress of the full respirator, which is just really difficult to wear for long periods. And on the other, you have the low stress of the facelet, which is designed for being ready during those long alerts. A full comparison really lays out just how different these two are.
Okay, so this table really lays it all out, doesn't it? The respirator, that gives you high, full face protection. The facelet, on the other hand, is marginal. It only covers the nose and mouth area. And like we just talked about, that leads to a huge difference in physiological stress, high versus low. And that directly impacts what they're used for. The respirator is for an active attack, while the facelet is for when you're on alert. And one last practical point. The respirator actually lets you drink, but with the facelet, you can't.
Okay, so we've got the face covered. What about protecting the rest of the body? Well, it's not just about a single barrier. It's actually about a really clever, permeable system called the layered concept. So here's the breakdown of how that permeable suit works. It's a 3-layer system. The outer layer is a tough, flame-retardant, and oil-repellent nylon. The innermost layer is just lightweight cotton, mainly for the wearer's comfort. But the real magic happens in that middle layer. This is the filter, and it's made of a fabric that's been impregnated with activated charcoal that adsorbs, desorbs, toxic gases. Of course, you can't forget your hands and feet. For these, we actually switch from a permeable to an impermeable material, butyl rubber. The gloves use a pretty smart 2-part system. There's an outer rubber layer for protection and an inner cotton layer to absorb sweat. And the overboots? They're designed to be worn right over your standard boots to protect you from any liquid agents or radioactive fallout. Okay, so you're fully protected. But what happens if that protection gets contaminated? And maybe more importantly, how do you even know you're in a hazardous area in the first place? This next section is all about the tools for decontamination and detection. First up for decontamination is the PDKI. And it's surprisingly simple. It's just a cloth pad filled with something called Fuller's Earth, which is a type of absorbent clay. The technique is just as straightforward. You blot, bang, and brush to physically absorb and remove any liquid chemical agents from your gear. But what about those tricky spots you can't easily reach? Well, that's what the PDK2 is for. It's got the same Fuller's Earth inside, but this time it's in a plastic puffer bottle. This lets you spray the absorbent powder right into all the crevices, folds, and other hard-to-reach areas of your equipment.
Now, for a completely different kind of threat, you need a different tool. The Radiological Decontamination Pad, or RDP, is specifically for radioactive dust, not chemical agents. It's basically a set of wet napkins with a surfactant solution. Think of it like a specialized wet wipe that physically picks up and removes those contaminants. So here's how it all breaks down. PDKI and PDKI2 both use Fuller's Earth, and they both target liquid chemical agents. One's for easy-to-reach surfaces, the other is for all the nooks and crannies. The RDP, though, uses a wet surfactant napkin, and it's specifically for radiological dust. The key takeaway here is simple.
You have to use the right tool for the right contaminant.
All right, moving on to detection, we have the 3-color detector paper. These are little self-adhesive strips you just stick right onto your suit, and they change color if they come into contact with liquid chemical agents. Now, the key limitation to remember, and this is crucial, is that they cannot detect vapors. They only react to liquids. And to detect radiation, there's the personal dosimeter. It's worn just like a wristwatch, and its job is to record the total absorbed radiation dose over time. But here's the catch. You can't just glance down at it to check your exposure. The dosimeter has to be inserted into a special reader to actually reveal the cumulative dose. All right, we've covered a lot of ground, I know. So let's boil all of this down into the most critical, exam-ready knowledge you really need to take away from this explainer.
First, remember the suit's 3-layer system. The outer layer is all about physical protection. It's flame and oil repellent. The inner layer is just for comfort. And that critical middle layer contains the activated charcoal, which filters gases through adsorption.
Next up, your detection tools. Think of these 2 icons as your eyes on an invisible battlefield. The 3-color paper, that only sees liquid chemicals. And the dosimeter, that's tracking radiation. But it needs a separate reader to tell you what it's seen.
And here it is, the 1-minute recap. The respirator gives you full protection but high stress. Never, ever use it for firefighting. The facelet mask is for low-threat alerts. The clothing uses that 3-layer concept: nylon, activated charcoal, and cotton. For decontamination, PDKs use Fuller's Earth for chemicals, the RDP uses wet napkins for radiation. And for detection, remember, paper is for liquids, the dosimeter tracks radiation. So, we'll end with this question for you to think about. Why is it so critical for armed forces to have both a respirator and a facelet mask, instead of just issuing the high-protection respirator to everyone? The hint is to think about that term physiological stress and the ability of a soldier to stay effective and even get some rest during a long alert. It's really a perfect example of how equipment design has to balance maximum protection with human endurance.